if you're just a poor church and you don't have a lot of money to play with and you've got your volunteer security, that's where this is really important. And that's where the Texas legislature really did us a huge favor here. And I think it's something that all states should look at emulating.
We are the Armed Attorneys. Today we're talking about an innovative law that started here in Texas, but could possibly be spreading across the country. You'll want to know about it because this is how we win fights. We got these little laboratories of different laws, and it's something that I think everybody could benefit from. But before we begin, show your support for the Second Amendment by hitting that like button. And today's video is brought to you by our friends over at Sonora Desert Institute. Check them out at sdi.edu/armed-attorneys and our friends at Aura.
Anyone can find anything on the internet, including your full legal name, your personal email, your home address, phone number, and even your relatives. I tried it out for myself. I Googled one of my sister's phone numbers and immediately found her home address. And that's kind of scary because she's a former prosecutor and her address is hidden by law. So this information is accessible because of data brokers who profit by selling your information to robocallers, telemarketers, spammers, and anyone else that wants to learn more about you. That's why I'm excited to tell you about today's sponsor, Aura.
Aura will identify data brokers that are exposing your information and automatically submit opt-out requests on your behalf. They'll even opt you out of junk mail and telemarketing lists. You can use our link, aura.com/armed attorneys, to try 2 weeks and see how many data brokers are sharing your information. It's also linked in our description, or scan the QR code. Aura also monitors your emails and passwords to see if they were involved in a data breach and exposed on the dark web, and gives you recommendations on what to do.
Aura's app also features a VPN, password manager, real-time credit and identity theft monitoring, internet parental controls, and protects your devices from malware. Aura has almost every internet safety tool you'll ever need. It's all inside the app. Let Aura do the hard work for you and keep you safe online. If you sign up right now, Aura will give you a 2-week free trial with our link.
You'll be shocked at how much of your private information Aura finds exposed over those 2 weeks. Go to aura.com/armed attorneys to start your free trial. It's also linked below in the description, or scan the QR code.
So today we're talking about a really innovative law that Texas has just passed. It's SB 694, and this has to do with limited liability for religious organizations and their security personnel should they find themselves in a defensive scenario. So we're going to be going through a couple of different things. Who qualifies? What we're talking about? Can you still get dragged into a lawsuit?
Here is, I think we need to back up a little bit, because we've had this issue here in Texas specifically, but I think nationwide a lot, which is that houses of worship continue to be soft targets.
Yep.
And so we are trying to figure out how to make them less soft. And part of that in Texas was to say, hey, you can have volunteer security. Lots of states have rules about who can call themselves security, what it means. You don't violate the law. And, basically you're kind of posing as security as being, and often sort of like posing as a cop when you're not. And so we've got all of this coming forward to say, look, we have these soft targets. Not all of them can afford security. We want to help them protect themselves without unnecessarily shelling out the cost for security. This is another step that way. But so we have this compounding problem, which is that churches that can't really afford to secure themselves with, let's say, opportunity police officers will often have volunteer security personnel, totally legal in Texas. Oftentimes, it's just people like you and me, right?
Yeah.
It's people who have handgun licenses, who train, who carry, who have agreed to be, the sheepdogs, essentially, of the church and to help protect it. But churches that are paying for security, that brings up another issue, which is, I am just some guy with a gun and a license. What happens if I screw up? If I have a negligent discharge in the church? If I, someone comes and attacks it, I end up shooting as a bystander, or the attacker sues me and the church, right? Which is, unfortunate, but happens all the time. Is this church that's poor and doesn't have enough funds anyway, are they on the hook? And the answer before now was we tried to parse out really specific things to help keep churches off the hook, but the answer was yeah, you might have to invoke your insurance policy, and there were all sorts of things that could potentially happen. But what now, Richard?
And that's the nightmare scenario. You have someone, and we have these heroes that, think Stephen Wolford, think Jack Wilson, these folks who stop these attacks. And a lot of states already have laws on the books that would shield the individuals from liability. So that nightmare scenario, you have a justified shoot. But then you have this church getting dragged in, and there's nobody sitting at the courthouse saying this is a good lawsuit, this is a bad lawsuit. And so a lot of people will just sue whoever they think has the deepest pockets in order to, it's a shakedown, see if they can get any kind of money. So we have this new law in Texas, and I think the idea behind all this is to stop the shakedown, right? And ultimately what this law does at the end of the day, it creates a new section of our civil practices and remedies code. And it says, hey, our religious organizations, think churches, mosques, synagogues, those places that are, exempt from taxes. If those people employ a security personnel, they define this as somebody who means an individual whom a religious organization hires to provide security services to the organization as an employee, or who is a volunteer of a religious organization whose duties or functions include providing security services to the organization. That if that person has some kind of intentional act, think self-defense, that religious organization will be immune from damages should they get sued. And I think there's a little bit of confusion around what immune from damages mean. What do they mean in this context?
So what that means isn't you can't get sued or you don't have to pay a lot of money to defend the lawsuit, which is unfortunate. But it means that at the end of the day, you are not going to be held liable for the person's medical bills, for their pain and suffering, for whatever it is that they are suing for. You are immune for damages. So, I mean, you hope that this is a summary judgment case, right? Because you show up and you say, hey, they're suing us for all this stuff. Look, we can't actually be liable. And you hope that, it goes away and you've only suffered tens of thousands of dollars of attorney's fees and that's it. But and I think the important word here is the volunteer security. That's really what keeps getting me because if you are a church and you hire a security company, well, that security company is going to get sued if their security officer doesn't.
They're bonded.
They're bonded, right? They're insured. They deal with it. But if you're just a poor church and you don't have a lot of money to play with, and you've got your volunteer security, that's where this is really important, and that's where the Texas legislature really did us a huge favor here, and I think it's something that all states should look at emulating if there's not something like this on your books already.
Yeah, because logistically, this is how it works. We have, let's say a perpetrator goes into a church, tries to hurt or even, have some kind of mass shooting, something like that. They're stopped by our volunteer and, everything's justified, squared away. Let's say their case is no billed. They aren't even dragged into the criminal process. Well, guess what? Dirtbag's family, they don't care. And what they'll do is they'll go find a plaintiff's lawyer who works on contingency. So they don't have to put any money up in order to get a lawyer to try to sue somebody to shake them down for some money. And so absent some kind of protection like this, I think this really discourages those plaintiff's lawyers because they know at the end of the day, a jury would be instructed that, hey, if this meets this provision, you shall award $0 in damages. Being a plaintiff's lawyer, knowing that there's no payday at the end of the rainbow, I think that really discourages it. And so I think that will keep a lot of these kind of dirtbags families from going and finding these lawyers who would sue a church even when they were the wrongdoer.
Right. Well, you hope. Now, in our experience, will a dirtbag lawyer sue you even when they absolutely know that you have no liability? The answer is yes. Plenty of dirtbags. Lots of them here in Texas. Lots of them who are perfectly willing to sue you at the drop of a hat. However, anything we can do to discourage the behavior and, most importantly, to ultimately protect the pocketbook of the good doer, the church, is incredibly important.
But we hope you enjoyed this discussion. If you did, consider subscribing, hitting that like button, and help us fight the anti-2A algorithm by sharing this video.
And as always, please question and comment for us below. Until next time, we're the Armed Services.
Can you put on your best sheepdog face?
Did you say sheepdog?
I said put on your best sheepdog face.